up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing shape-shifting extraterrestrials that are among us. It's no big secret that most people in this community believe that there are extraterrestrials living and walking among us humans. Most people aren't even aware that it's happening, but the fact of the matter is they do see the evidence of it more than they could ever realize, but they chalk it up to something just being odd or strange, and then they move on with their day. When it happens to someone in this community, though, someone more aware, we tend to take a longer look at the experience we have, and a lot of the time, we seem to be coming to the same exact conclusions. There are shape-shifting extraterrestrials, and they have already infiltrated our society. Let's just jump right in. Most of the information in this video today comes from a site called Think About It Docs, and while the initial and overall witness, like the main witness in this video, his actual name is unknown, he describes himself as, quote, an anonymous intelligence officer and a planetary patriot, end quote, and goes by the name Commander X. Commander X claims to hold a very high security position in the intelligence community, and whether or not you want to take that at face value is completely up to you, as it always is. Before you make that decision, though, let's hear what he alleges is really going on in our planet these days when it comes to the subject of extraterrestrial infiltration. This witness says that not only have many aliens already infiltrated our society, but that they aren't always merely hiding in the shadows. They've already engrossed themselves in our society, and you could be dealing with one or many in your own life in the form of someone you think you know. I've been saying for a very long time that I believe it's more than possible and highly likely that at least one person you know has been overtaken by some sort of extraterrestrial being. At least one. Probably many. My theories on that vary greatly depending on which ways the individual has changed and on the intent of the aliens, meaning, did they change for better or for worse? Well, I don't know. How are they acting? For example, there could be a benign race of ETs who overtake someone who accidentally dies or something, and they see an opportunity to grab a human body without having to harm anyone in the process, and therefore that's just what they do. Then there are, at least in my opinion, and based on things I've been told personally and my own experiences with such things, that will get rid of a specific human in order to take over their lives because there is something they have or are privy to that the ET and their compatriots want. Commander X says he has compiled a giant list of people who came forward with instances of aliens in their midst. Many of them come from the now infamous Dulce base, which is an underground facility on the Colorado-New Mexico border near the town of Dulce, New Mexico, and that I covered here on this channel a little while ago. I am 100% of the belief that base exists, and therefore will discuss it going forward as though it absolutely does. But keep in mind that as of right now, 2023, it's only alleged to exist, and no one really has ever brought forth any kind of tangible evidence or absolute information to the public to prove it does or that it doesn't one way or another. Dulce Base is the subject of wild speculation and somewhat bizarre conspiracy theories, some of which aren't that out there if you really think about everything else that we've learned since the conception of just this channel alone, let alone as a whole in this community in the past few years. One of the rumors I believe to be absolutely true is that the United States government uses the base to house aliens from all different planets, that they're reverse engineering UFOs, and it's said to be run by humans and aliens who work together on projects and to help to keep it all a big secret from the general public. It's said that extraterrestrials capture humans and use them for all sorts of things underground in that particular base as well. Some of the things they're alleged to be doing with us is using us for strange and inhumane experiments, keeping us caged, and then using us as a food source. It's said a lot of the experimentation done on abductees is also done in either Dulce or other underground bases, just like it, and not, contrary to popular belief, up in the sky in their own ships or on their own home planet. So when you're being abducted and you're experimented on, how do you know you're in a ship? you kind of wake up usually that way, right? So you don't really actually know where you are. You're just assuming based on what you saw before you were put out, passed out, knocked out, whatever. There's also said to be shape-shifting aliens down there too, and that's where this all plays into what we are discussing here today. According to our witness, according to Mr. Commander X, Dulce Base is a very real place, and everyone there, from humans to aliens alike, are trained and even sometimes brainwashed to keep it a secret from everyone they know. He is adamant that there are shapeshifters down there who basically run everything from the experiments to the secret programs and right to the everyday and sometimes even mundane activities carried out there. The first report comes from an anonymous private who told Commander X that while he was stationed above ground at Dulce, he witnessed some terrifyingly strange and bizarre things happening around there. He believes he encountered an extraterrestrial posing as a human being and reported, quote, "One morning last September, I was working on a routine job when another of the young enlistees, a mechanic, came in with a small rush job he wanted welded at once. He had the print and proceeded to show me exactly what he wanted. We were both bending over the bench in front of the welder when I happened to look directly at his face. It seemed to suddenly become covered with a semi-transparent film or cloud. His features faded, and in their place appeared a thing with bulging eyes, no hair, and scales for skin. I stood and looked at it for about 20 seconds. Whatever it was stood and looked at me without moving. Then the strange face seemed to fade away and at the same time recede into the ordinary face of the young man underneath. The dissipation of the imposed face lasted or took about 5 seconds before it was completely gone, and I was standing there weak, my mouth open and staring at the young man who had come in with the rush order. The young man did not seem to be conscious of the elapsed time when I had observed all of this, but went right on talking about the job as if nothing had happened. This is hard to take, but I assure you it was still harder for me. No one can realize a jolt you could get from seeing anything like this until they've experienced it for themselves. It was several days before I had myself convinced that maybe after all what I had seen was real and that I was not suffering from illusions and the beginnings of insanity," end quote. It didn't end there for that witness, though, and in fact, he had a similarly strange and terrifying encounter only a few days later, where he said of what happened to him, quote, "The next time was later at night at the guardhouse near the front gate on the way into work. I had purchased some small items, and on arriving, I went around to the guardhouse with my slip to retrieve my package. There was only one guard on duty. I handed him the check, and he began to look at the package, taking his time. I waited a minute, then happened to look directly at him. His face began to change. Again, a face of a strange creature was imposed. You could see through the imposed face for a few seconds, and then it became the only one visible. Solidified is the word, and again about 20 seconds. Again, 5 seconds for dissipation, and the guard started to move normally again, found my package, and gravely handed it to me, and I walked out without a word being said," end quote. I don't know about you guys, but for me, this is all absolutely terrifying to even try to wrap my head around. I know that it happens, though, and I think anyone who thinks it definitely isn't happening should take a very long and very hard look around them. Like literally, as you're going through your day-to-day, just really pay attention to people, things, and places around you. I beg of you, please. If you think this isn't possible, please pay attention. We have to be more aware of our surroundings in general, guys. Otherwise, we won't be able to see things like this for what and who they really are. The fact of the matter is that regardless of whether or not they have any sort of nefarious intentions, there is a reason all of this is being kept from us, the general public. And it's that fact alone that makes me really question their motives and how safe we actually are, both as individuals and as human beings in general and overall. Obviously, Dulce isn't the only place where things like this are happening. In fact, I believe it's happening in random places like our grocery stores and while we're merely walking down the street. But there are places like Dulce, for example, and others we are going to discuss here today where it happens at a much higher rate than a random place like school or work or wherever else. Another place that's had many sightings of shape-shifting aliens is located right outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, at a United States Army facility called Dugway Proving Ground, or DPG. This spot was established in 1942, and its purpose is to test biological and chemical weapons. According to the site, Think About It Docs, quote, "Aside from Dulce, New Mexico, and the Nevada test site, other areas where these chameleon sightings have taken place include Deep Springs, California, where these alien imposters have allegedly been sighted, and Dugway Utah, where one woman by the name of Barbara, who worked as a hairstylist, claimed she saw one of the high-ranking military officials transform temporarily into an entity with, quote, reptilian features, end quote. Another source at Dugway, who worked in an auto shop, claimed that he saw a similar phenomenon while changing the tires on the car of one Dugway military official. Remember that Dugway works closely with Area 51, which is just to the west and across the state border. It is interesting that there are claims that the joint CIA alien activity within the Dreamland underground complexes of Nevada have and are being extended to the underground facilities below the St. George and Dugway areas of Utah, among other sites, end quote. What do you guys think of all this so far? If you do believe that there are these shape-shifting entities, reptilian or otherwise, out there, do you believe that they're only spotted on military bases? As always, let me know all of your thoughts on all of this down below in the comments. A really strange and downright bizarre report comes from just south of Seattle, Washington, at the Madigan Military Hospital near Fort Lewis. UFO researcher Val Valerian said the hospital is overrun by reptilians posing as human beings. Overrun. Those were the words. That was the word. He talked about it in the Leading Edge newspaper and used all caps throughout most of the article just to better try to get his point across. Obviously, you guys can't see the all caps, but I will try my best to emphasize where they are. He wrote, quote, "About a year ago, we ran into several people who stated that they had heard that reptilian humanoids were working at a U.S. Army hospital near Fort Lewis, Washington." So when I'm yelling like that, that's the caps. At that point, these statements were simply filed away in rumor status, pending the arrival of something more substantial. Descriptions of the nature of and appearance of alien humanoid forms that could be termed reptilian vary widely. Reptilian humanoids have been described in Italy as looking very lizard-like, even with tails. Logic would seem to tell us that if alien humanoids were in fact in collusion with military medical personnel at a hospital, they would not in fact have the appearance of anything other than humans or be close enough to humans to blend in. About a month ago, the nature of synchronicity brought me to an espresso bar where I chanced to engage a lady in her early 50s in some small conversation about an entirely unrelated matter. She had been a nurse for some 20 years, and 16 of those 20 years had been spent working for the United States Army. She retired from the service and was now job hunting in the local area. She was very professional and seemed to know a lot about the nursing field. Gradually, her conversation got around to a very unusual place, Madigan Military Hospital, which is located on Route 5 south of Seattle. She had applied for work at the hospital and noticed that it was indeed a hospital, unlike any she had ever seen before. Madigan is a brand new $150 million facility built about a year or so ago. From her description, there are small R2-D2 type robots that shuttle prescriptions between floors. All of the equipment is prototyped one of a kind, like laser x-rays, and a lot of equipment that was extremely high tech. It was not this alone that piqued my interest, but a comment she made later. She made the statement that when she entered a specific lab in the hospital, she noticed that all personnel were extremely absorbed in their work. Nothing too uncommon about that, right? But then she stated that she had the thought that some of the equipment looked quite, quote-unquote, alien. And two men who looked exactly alike turned and looked at her in response to her thought. She said that the eyes of those two men were quite penetrating and that they both moved in unison. That got my interest. She then stated that during the tour of the facility, the individual who was escorting her said that the top floor of the hospital and two of the sub-basement floors were top secret R&D areas and were off limits to both military and civilian personnel. Off limits to military and civilian personnel? So who is within the bounds and limits of who can enter that space? Only medical staff? Medical staff trumps military staff, I guess, in a hospital, maybe? I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. That really got my attention, end quote. So what do you guys think about all of that? Think about it though, guys. If they are here helping with medical equipment and working in hospitals, then does it stand to reason that there would just be so-called quote unquote everyday Joe types who simply want to live on Earth and live among us? Is it possible that these extraterrestrials are the products of some sort of hybrid program or brought here for one specific purpose or another, mainly, or so it seems, medical or military? Could there be ones with less than honest and peaceful intent who are here or who were created for the exact opposite reasons? I believe all of that is possible because honestly, when you think about it, we already know that they're here, and we already know that not all of them are fans of humans and humanity in general. Like, we know that. I'm thinking tall grays and reptilians specifically, but the list goes on and on. I mean, you can disagree in the comments below, obviously, but make sure to tell me why you disagree and let me know why you think the things that you think. I'm really interested to know. According to the woman who went on that tour, the equipment looked like it was from outer space, and it also looked more advanced than anything else she had ever seen in her entire life. Remember, she worked in the medical field as a nurse for 20 years. She had never seen anything like this. She got some pretty strange and interesting stories from the nurses as well while she was there, which she spoke about at length. She also mentioned some very bizarre procedures that she saw being carried out on patients at the hospital. Here is just some of what she had to say about those things. Quote, "I noticed that a patient walked over and climbed on an exam table. The procedure that they were doing always requires that the patient must be sedated. However, I noticed that the physicians leaned over the patient and touched the patient in the center of their forehead with his index finger and middle finger of one hand. Immediately, the patient fell into a state of sedation and the procedure was started." What kind of doctor can touch a patient in that way and sedate him? I looked around at the other personnel in the room at this time. There were two, a private first class and a specialist fourth class, at opposite ends of the room from where I was standing. Both of these men were the same size, had the same skin color, and moved in a very deliberate manner. I was talking to the sergeant and happened to say something to myself very softly while having the thought how strange these people seemed. Both other men turned and looked at me almost as if to stare at me. I got this strange feeling. I had heard before from a friend whose brother had made the uncharacteristic comment that aliens worked at Madigan. All the people in the room and the military personnel in general that I had seen in the hospital seemed to move very, very slowly, almost in slow motion. I left the area and went back to the sergeant's office, end quote. All I could think when I read this encounter was that here we have another case of someone who wouldn't ask questions. I talk about this all the time though, right? I feel as though I would have asked the questions, and that's probably why certain things like this sort of stuff doesn't happen to me enough, I guess. How many of you would at least ask what was going on in that room? The middle of the forehead, right? That's the pineal gland, or the third eye, and if you don't know what that is, then you aren't spending enough time in my live streams. I'm just saying. The woman who saw all of this was so intrigued by it that she decided to go back to the hospital again just a few weeks later, and that time she brought along a friend with her. She wanted someone else to see what was happening, and while I don't know the exact reason, I wonder if it was for confirmation that she wasn't just overreacting or trying to, unconvince herself that she was making it all up. She said the trip with her friend just confirmed that something very strange was happening at that hospital. She once again wrote in mostly all caps on purpose to emphasize her points. Here's what she had to say about her visit that she and the friend made together. Quote, "My friend and I entered through what is known as the clinic mall. This area houses the outpatient clinic. There were very few people there for such a large clinic. We were told that there are 3 floors beneath the hospital and 1 floor above that are off limits to all personnel, military and civilian, and that these areas are classified top secret and were research and development R&D areas. There are very unusual antennas on top of the hospital. The 3-story main service area has a complex on top of it that appears to have no entrance and no windows. Judging from the way the hospital is built, there are a lot of dead areas that comprise spaces that cannot be accessed from the main service area. The personal feeling we both get being in the hospital was that we started to feel very drained, and we both experienced getting a very dull headache. It wasn't until we had driven several miles from the facility that we started to feel better," end quote. Again, we have off limits to military and civilian, and that blows my mind. I was wondering when the energetic vampirism would come into play. It happens a lot with light workers specifically. I think that this woman and her friend were able to be so observant of what was really going on behind all of the facades because they were simply more open to experiencing all of it. How many of you have ever just gone to a regular hospital for a visit with someone that's a patient? Any patient for any reason, including to see someone who just had a baby. That's a happy place, right? Whether they're sick or not, though, you are bound to feel some sort of energetic draining or some sort of energetic blockages, things like that, depending on your abilities and the degree of your openness. She could have even spontaneously activated in a place like that, which is something I've also seen happen many times. I avoid hospitals at all costs and no matter what. And when I do have to go, I spend several hours preparing myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and psychically for it because it almost never ends well for me. And I would be so lucky as to only have a mere dull headache afterwards. It's bad. And I think a lot of you guys, we've discussed this in chat and we've discussed it privately. It is pretty bad when people like us go into hospitals or even are near them, honestly. So, is this place in particular or others in the world staffed with shape-shifting extraterrestrials in disguise? I'm sure I have no idea. I have no idea if it's actually happening. But is it possible? I say absolutely it is possible, and actually, in my opinion, it's very highly likely. One thing I do like to bring up in conversations about alien infiltration on our Earth and how they shapeshift or otherwise take on human appearances and mannerisms is the fact that all we have to do is look at how advanced our technology has changed since the Eisenhower administration here in the United States. It's changed globally since that time so fast, like the snap of a finger. Look at the great strides we've made with tech when there have been absolutely no upgrades attempted by anyone up until the last 2 years or less with mundane things like toothbrushes and women's times of the month. Why tech? Well, this also depends on what you personally believe, but I believe that Eisenhower was forced with threats that they would otherwise deal with Russia during a time of paranoia in this country if he didn't go along with the aliens' proposal. The they I am referring to here are, of course, extraterrestrials, as I think that's the first time official contact was made in the last few centuries at least. They offered technology in exchange for abductions, and then the aliens went off contract and just started taking and torturing us. However, that's another story altogether, and I apologize for going off on such a tangent, but I thoroughly and wholeheartedly believe that's what happened and how all of this began in the first place. Our government and others around the world started to realize what these entities could do, and for better or worse, went into deals with them without alerting the public. So, is it only Dulce based in the hospital in Seattle? Hell no, it's not. It's happening all over the world. And according to Think About It, they've even infiltrated the Pentagon and other top secret government agencies. According to that website, quote, sometime during the 1980s, a secretary working in the Pentagon noticed a high-ranking Pentagon official who had apparently lost a contact lens. The eye from where the lens fell out was not human, but instead contained a vertically slit pupil. No one working at the Pentagon seemed to know where the official worked, although they had apparently assumed that he was supposed to be there in some capacity or another. The secretary, however, informed her superiors of the strange incident, and immediately security personnel approached the officer, who apparently was not aware of his missing contact lens. The man did not make any major attempt to resist. When the apartment of the official was searched, copies of several sensitive documents on the Star Wars or Strategic Defense Initiative program were discovered. Apparently, the entity had been stealing the documents and transmitting their contents to some point beyond our own planet. Rumor had it that the entity was physically examined, and it was discovered that its internal organs were not human. Several areas across western United States where surface and or underground military installations exist have reportedly produced similar chameleon sightings. There seems to be a trend which involves the infiltration of the NSA/CIA and the subsequent replacement of agency personnel and in turn military industrial personnel by alien life forms not loyal to the planet Earth nor to the human race in general. These reports are very similar to other reports that made the rounds within fringe research groups during the early 1980s concerning the reported assimilation of high-ranking communist officials and scientists by serpent-like humanoids. reptilian beings that were reputedly revived out of suspended animation from a frozen city that was discovered under the northern Siberian ice fields. This was referred to as the, quote, Siberian Affair, end quote. So guys, I mentioned this earlier and that it seems to be all well and good when they're helping out in hospitals, but now, according to what you believe, but I will say I believe this wholeheartedly, they are literally taking over government agents who have top secret clearances or otherwise finding ways to look human enough to pass in order to gain access to our sensitive and top secret documents and information, military and otherwise. I do have to wonder why the hell they would want. What would they want with our military secrets? But I mean, who knows? I know all of this sounds a bit conspiratorial, but that's what they are most likely betting on. They're betting on it, on people saying, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. When we have the media and our own government making us feel like we're insane for seeing what we're actually seeing in the sky or right before some other contact or just otherwise in general, it's easy to see why we are such easy targets here on Earth. Let's talk about one more thing. So at first I was confused and kind of just glossed over it when they were talking about the agent who lost his contact lens and they said he wasn't aware that he had lost it. I wasn't sure if they meant that he was lying. Like, what do you mean? I didn't lose a lens. But I actually realize now what they mean was he was just walking around with this vertical slit eye and had no idea. But does this mean they're actually taking over people's actual bodies, or are they replicating humans and making their own people? I sure as hell have no clue, but I do have my own theories. Let me know what you all think in the comments below, please, because the way that they wrote that, it was kind of fuzzy for me. This extraterrestrial was stealing secrets and sending them to others of his kind who were either here already or out there somewhere in the ether, somewhere in the universe, no doubt gearing up to come here or send more, right? So while this is all very strange and in my opinion absolutely and obviously believable, there is an account out there that I managed to get my hands on that is even crazier than all of it that we've covered so far, and that's really saying something though, isn't it? According to this document, there was an official military operation where they were specifically targeting an alien infiltrator who was posing as a human being and trying to capture it. The account comes from UFO researcher Victor Martinez, who alleges he is a former employee of the federal government here in the United States and coordinator at the Joint Recon Study Group. According to him, officials at the Defense Intelligence Agency, or the DIA, the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigations, along with other very high-up government and military officials and agencies, have been involved for a very long time, we're talking decades here, in top-secret activities involving non-human but human-appearing extraterrestrials in the United States specifically. He talks about one such operation that he said was carried out in 1980 and that it was called Operation Tango Sierra. Victor said someone he knew and had a close connection with who worked for the DIA leaked the information to him at the time it was all happening. This source outlined the government's whole plan to not only monitor, but to capture and detain extraterrestrial entities that were posing as human beings who lived and live among us. It began with the abduction of a federal employee by an extraterrestrial that had been masquerading as a human. He said of it all, quote, "The original operation began in early 1980 when an Earth female was identified by a United States intelligence as being a so-called alien abductee. She had been abducted by a male non-human in 1977, which was her first abduction. This woman was single, 23 years old, and a trusted, well-respected United States government employee. The male non-human showed the Earth woman abductee projections of alien life on another planet. The projection was from a small triangle device. The woman viewed this projection, which she described as images displayed in a three-dimensional holographic view. The male non-human never harmed the Earth woman abductee. During the 3 years of her ongoing abduction, the Earth woman was taken by the male non-human through a, quote, veil of light, end quote, to another place. The Earth woman described this place as being a light bubble. She would sit inside the bubble and view these holographic projections with the male non-human. On one occasion, the male non-human introduced the Earth woman to another male whom the Earth woman described in debriefing details as not being human, i.e. not being an Earth male abductee. The Earth woman called this other being a creature. The creature performed a medical examination on the Earth woman. The woman did not fully consent to the alien's examination as she was temporarily paralyzed. After the examination, the woman was taken back to her residence. When the Earth woman brought up her abduction by a male alien to the attention of a co-worker, the co-worker contacted an office security official who then contacted U.S. intelligence officials. United States intelligence spent hours and hours vetting the woman's story, conducting thorough background investigations, performing surveillance, and administering several polygraph examinations. The Earth woman's story was eventually deemed to be factually true and correct. United States intelligence then mounted a very special, highly classified operation to capture this alien being who lived near Landover, Maryland, end quote. So I believe all of this wholeheartedly, as I've already stated a few times, but I do have trouble understanding why the extraterrestrials do this. I mean, this isn't the first time that we've seen this happen, where someone was abducted and shown strange images or brought through a veil of light, etc. To what end, though, is my next question, but it seems like even the officials in charge of special intelligence investigations like this have no clue what the hell is happening or why either. I plan on asking a lot more questions the next time I get a little visit in the night by one of these horrifying creatures. That's for damn sure. Provided I remember any of it, that is. I mean, am I right? Do any of you have any additional information as to why they do this? Why the aliens do this? Why do they show us images of Earth or whatever they show us, because it varies by individual, but then never explain what it is they're showing us or why they're showing it to us? An intensive investigation was allegedly launched into the situation by the 7602 IR Intelligence Wing Section 3. It lasted 5 months and involved 60 intelligence officers. Their job was to find out whether or not the man, so the non-human male, who abducted the female government agent was a real man or an extraterrestrial of some sort. They also were tasked with determining whether or not this creature/man was a threat to national security. The individual they were looking for was found, detained, and questioned at length. Here is some of what happened and what was said during the questioning of this alleged alien imposter. Quote, "The male non-human was interrogated by teams of AFOSI special agents over several weeks and in total was questioned and intensely interrogated for many months by other agencies. It was during this time that the male non-human disclosed its race, its resident planet, and the reason it came here to Earth. The male alien basically cooperated and provided details of its life on his alien home world. The non-human entity was released on the direct orders of then President Carter in late 1980 and subsequently left Earth and returned to its home planet. The male non-human originated from the star system Delta Pavonis, 20 light years from Earth, where it was the fourth planet from their sun. It is roughly the same size as our Earth. The travel time to Earth was 18 Earth months using a very complex propulsion system and time-space displacement travel mode. Back then in 1980, we could not understand the alien propulsion system and we never saw his spacecraft. When President Carter let the male non-human leave, he just vanished. I was never in the intelligence loop as to how he left or how he departed Earth. I'm not sure how they learned English so well, nor other languages. You've got to remember that this was extreme compartmentalization. I knew just what I was supposed to know. There is much more to the alien debriefing that I do not know. From what I've learned over the years, this race of alien beings originally came to Earth as explorers about a century ago. Apparently, they could assume the human shape and form and easily live among us. With respect to the male non-human's employment, he worked as a records keeper for the United States Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C. He was able to manufacture his own identification documents by assuming the name/ID of a deceased Earth human. He was in a career that did not require a high-level security clearance, thereby enabling him to escape the much greater scrutiny given to secret clearance level background checks and above, end quote. I immediately looked up what species of known extraterrestrial comes from Delta Pavonis, because we know where the reptilians come from and the Pleiadians, the Greys, the Sirians, etc., but I couldn't find anything about what type of alien this would have been. That concerns me for a number of reasons. The main reason is because they obviously will go to great lengths to abduct human beings, and yet the human race hasn't been made aware of them or what they really look like, where they come from, etc. And this all happened between 1977 and 1980, so before I was even born. That's very concerning that they're still hiding all of this in this species of ET in general from us. It seems as though it was easier for this alien to get a job as a low-level government official and to fake his own documentation, not not to mention how he so readily knew how to do those things, okay, than it is for like a regular person to go and get a job. And it goes to show, in my opinion, that it would be easier for an alien race that is a possible or probable threat to do those things than for a human being to actually do them. Also, one of the other things that immediately grabbed my attention is how this extraterrestrial was able to just go about his business every single day and work a government job with no one being the wiser. And then he was let go with no repercussions at all, which makes me also wonder what the government gained from this particular race of extraterrestrial. I mean, why else would they not at the very least keep him detained? They put the welfare and safety of all of humanity, not to mention that poor young woman who had to go through all of that for 3 years, by the way, after the well-being and safety of one alien. Why did this non-human male, this extraterrestrial, have to go through all of that in the first place, though? We all know that most species of extraterrestrial, all they need to do is beam us up into their ships and or just abduct us while we're sleeping at night, or beam us out of the woods, whatever it is that they do. And they do all of that. There's hundreds of ways for them to get their hands on us. And yet this alien went and worked an actual job, found a place to live, and for all intents and purposes, and by the looks of it, just easily blended into our society for years without anyone being the wiser. Had he not kidnapped that woman, then would he ever even have been found out as an alien? My guess is that no, he wouldn't have. And what other reason, aside from to see if he would be able to get away with it, for how long, and where we would draw the line, what the repercussions would be, etc., would he have had to go through such great lengths, and obviously unnecessary lengths, to abduct a single human being just to show her seemingly random holographic messages? I really have no idea how more people aren't understanding how incredibly dangerous and terrifying all of this is. So basically, they can abduct us at any time they want. It's been proven again and again and again ad nauseum. So why did he go through all of this? The source who fed all of the above information to Martinez wasn't done yet. He explained that although the alien had easily passed for human and was able to take on a human form through some vaguely explained process that seems to still remain a mystery to even the highest agents in any given government field, they are in fact not human, and their actual images are immensely terrifying and quite hideous to behold. The source went on to say, quote, although they possess the human shape, form, and basic anatomy, they were not human beings like you and me. Their actual normal, real appearance was that of a hideous-looking creature that would most certainly scare, frighten, and terrify a normal Earth human. Above all, they did not have any extra powers or abilities. They had no weapons and never tried to harm Earth humans. Their sole intent and stated mission was that they just wanted to study Earth humans and obtain the basic structure of the human body, anatomy, and social interplay. So that answers my question from up top. I don't know how many other species of this specific type of alien were among us, as I was not authorized to that specific highly classified information. However, I am positive that there were more similar type operations than just this one. Operation Tango Sierra was just one operation that lasted 9 months from start to finish in the DC area. United States intelligence had more such operations around the United States, with one in the Southwest and another in the Northwest, but I don't know for sure on the location details. Indeed, the government was claimed to be very intently focused on investigating, quote, the presence of extraterrestrial creatures having infiltrated the highest levels of the United States government. End quote. Quote again, as for other visiting alien races, we knew of 9 of them. The Ebens were the nicest, while the Trantiloids were the ugliest, meanest sons of bitches, and most dangerous. I only know that the very inner circle of our government knows. That is about all I can tell you. I never spoke with the male non-human in Operation Tango Sierra, but I was actively involved in this operation. Most of the older fellows who knew all of this are dead now. Former CIA Director Richard M. Helms was our boss for the operation. He died some years ago, end quote. There you go. They wanted to learn about us and see how we behaved in normal everyday work and social situations and settings. Even way back then, it was known that there are several different entities infiltrating our society, and if we think and continue along those lines, just imagine how many there are today. Now, don't get me wrong, guys, because I am very much aware that there are many extraterrestrial races that are spiritually enlightened beings, And I have had contact with many who will flat out admit that while they don't care anything about humans or what happens to us specifically, they take such a great interest in us because they care about and are concerned for our planet. That makes sense, so if you really think about it, that spiritually enlightened and elevated beings would be more concerned with Gaia than the entities living on her. We're terrible to our planet for the most part, and more than likely a lot of the races of ETs that we see so often, who are very kindly seeming and benevolent, are close enough in the universe to our planet that could have a devastating effect on them and their species should something devastating happen here. We have to try and see everything from all of the different sides and angles. The problem with that is we have no idea how many races or species of aliens are out there just living and working among us, and we can't be so dense as to think that every single one of them has such benign intentions as this non-human male from back in 1977. It blows my mind and it terrifies me, but it fascinates me too, all at the same time. It's very confusing emotionally for me. So while I've already mentioned a few species and races of extraterrestrials that we know at the very least come and visit here, Commander X states some of them specifically as well. The one thing that I just can't seem to understand, though, is why they go through such great lengths when many of the races have proven time and again that they don't have to go through all of this to watch what we do as a society or singularly when we are alone. They don't need to go through all of this in order to take us or even watch us. So I have to wonder what's really going on here and how anyone could ever believe that that's all they have in mind when doing things like making themselves look like human beings and living among us. It's completely unnecessary. It's time consuming. According to Commander X, the phenomenon of chameleons or shape-shifting extraterrestrial entities who have already infiltrated our society and who live among us regularly include the very well-known Greys and the reptilians, just to name a couple out of hundreds or possibly thousands. According to intel as to how they are able to make themselves appear physically and otherwise come across as human enough to fool other humans around them, they employ many different tactics, such as reconstructive surgery, molecular shapeshifting, occult technology, techno-hypnotic transmitters, and portable laser hologram technology. And again, that's just to name a few. So I tried, and it was actually quite hilarious. I tried looking some of these things up because I don't have a very scientific mind or any sort of understanding of these things whatsoever. And I started with the techno-hypnotic transmitter. All that came up was a bunch of stuff about techno music and Japanese hallucinatory techno music. So music that makes you trip, and while I doubt that's exactly what we're talking about here, perhaps it's not that far off. I mean, I don't know. Is it possible that they use some sort of transmitter to make a human being confused or something like that in order to keep them from either looking too closely or seeing too much should they choose to look too closely? It makes perfect sense to me and reminds me of how many people have emailed or otherwise contacted me asking if aliens lived among us because for one reason or another they had a strange feeling about their new neighbor or their sister-in-law. I don't think that we humans aren't onto them, at least some of the time, but they employ these measures in order to keep us confused in our brains. They keep our brains from being able to make the right sorts of connections. I then looked up molecular shapeshifting and was brought to a site that compared it all with the game musical chairs. I am so lost. So if any of you understand any of this on any level, let me know in the comments below, please. I mean, I understand the basic premise of what they're doing, but I wanted to try and get more details. I just couldn't figure it out. So back to Commander X. He said that the technology these entities are using is incredibly hard to detect and that it's all very sophisticated. Probably all the more so almost 45 years ago. There have been some people, namely scientists and the like, who have been able to figure out how the tech works, or at the very least, to be able to just detect them. Extraterrestrial researcher and author of the book Extraterrestrial Friends and Foes, George Andrews, said of the attempts made to see through the guises of aliens, quote, "A friend of mine and 4 of his friends experimented with crystalline structures a year or 2 ago, and they figured out how to cut them along certain planes so that they could actually see the aura or energy field around people." That's when they discovered that all people aren't people or the people who they thought they were. It appears that some extraterrestrial humanoids have a dark blue ovoid aura. It so happens that all of the people they checked that met these criteria also wore dark glasses and made every attempt to act like they really wanted nothing to do with people in general. They followed one of these people out into the desert, and he evidently had a trailer. After waiting until dusk, they made a pretense of needing help and knocked on the door. After a short while, the light went on and the man came to the door. He looked normal, except that his pupils were vertical slits instead of circles. It works. The only trouble is it costs $2,000 to put out a pair of those glasses altogether. End quote. So before I end this, guys, I would just like to say that as someone who can see people's auras automatically, who has communicated with the dead and other forms of spirit probably since the womb, and at least as far back as I can remember, I have always had some sort of deeply ingrained fear of not only aliens, but of outer space as well. I never understood it until very recently, when some screened and repressed memories have come up of abductions and things like that in my life, and that's something that I've been dealing with ever since, and I've spoken to you guys about my journey with it a little bit. I will say that ever since discovering those memories and understanding why I always had those seemingly strange and nonsensical fears, I have started seeing energy fields around certain people, mainly strangers, more and more often as time goes by. It seems the more I open up my mind and my psyche to understanding that all of this is actually happening, the more I'm able to pick out who isn't human and who is, and who may only be partially human. It's something I don't entirely understand and that I'm not entirely comfortable speaking about publicly right now, but as I learn more, I will certainly talk more about it. It's all so confusing right now that as soon as I think I have a handle on and at least partially understand something, the sooner I find out everything I thought was incorrect and something else entirely is what's actually happening. All I'm saying is we have to keep an open mind and pay close attention to how your energy sits around certain people. If you have friends, family members, or even co-workers that you just can't put your finger on why you're uncomfortable around them, or if you flat out don't like them, don't trust them, think they're evil, etc., seemingly for no apparent reason at all, it's probably because your humanity is pointing you to there being something different about them that doesn't make sense or sit right in your own human energy. It goes so much further than the mind and merely emotionally disliking someone. There are aliens infiltrating every single part of our society nowadays, and it's either going to become more and more apparent as light workers and those with certain sets of abilities, like a lot of what is going on in this community in particular, come to understand that this is what's happening, or it's going to lessen with fewer amounts of people coming to see what's really underneath and understanding what's going on, because as more of us become onto them, they will develop better tech to make themselves blend in even more. So the more aware we become, the more advanced they're going to become, the more technologically advanced in making it so that we don't become more aware, if that makes sense. Just something to think about, and as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you enjoyed hanging out with each other in the premiere. Spread the love by sharing this video, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Watch it all the way through, listen all the way through, and leave a positive comment. So, the Monday that you are going to be watching this, we would usually have afternoon talk at noon, but I am hoping and praying that it does not rain here in northern New Jersey so I can go to the water park. So afternoon talk will be Tuesday, July 18th at 12 noon Eastern time, and we're trying to have New Englander Rodion to talk about some of his really insane experiences and his spiritual transformation that he's been making, attachments he's had. His journey has been incredible, and I think you guys would really enjoy listening to him and learning from him and helping him, because he does still have such a long way to go, right? In the description box, you will find links to the Kindle and paperback versions of my books, Missing the Faith Theory, Encounters with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories, and Shadow Entities, Sleep Paralysis, and Beyond. To donate to the channel, PayPal, Cash App, my Amazon wish list gift link, all of those links in the description box too. On Wednesday nights, right here on this channel at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time, you will find myself and Ghost Dragon ZW doing live intuitive oracle. If you want to know what that is, you don't know what it is, you've never been there, come on in and check it out. Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. From week to week, it's all bi-weekly, so you will have either myself, Ghost Dragon ZW, Miss Paranormal Pixie for Chillax in chat, or Conversations with Lara, the Paranormal Pixie Hour. There is so much more. JiveCreations.com for Gemma Jade merch. Guys, check it out. The first 15 people or so to send me a picture of merch that you ordered, either wearing it, drinking from it, using it, having it on your car, whatever the case may be. If you purchase Gemma Jade merch at JiveCreations.com, which is the only place that you can get it, Thank you, Arisha Haynes and Tennille Haynes, Miss Lotus Girl and her twinny. Then I will either give you free readings or send you a gift box or something like that. So GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com to send email, to send pictures. If you want autographed copies of my book or many of my magazine articles. I know I'm forgetting a lot, but I've been filming this for quite a while and it's a pretty busy day for me today. I love you guys tremendously, okay? Be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody told you today, you're amazing, you're worth it, you can do it. If someone's trying to make you feel less than or telling you that, you know, you can't do something or you're never going to be this or that, you know what? They're projecting their own crap onto you. You don't have to put up with that. Remove emotion from your responses and watch how quickly they stop bothering you. Okay? People like that are just gotta get them out of our energy as quickly as we can. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.